Hello World History. This video is for those of you who want some help taking this quiz about the Holocaust today. And so let's get into it. There's a video that is attached to the instructions, and that's 7 minutes long, and you'll have to watch that also. The video is from Ken Burns, who's a documentarian, and he made a film following different U.S. servicemen, and some of them were there to liberate concentration camps and death camps, and it shows photos and video and interviews, and so that's part of this too. And there are other primary source documents within this quiz. So when you take a quiz, I hope that you're also learning in the quiz. It's not just a test you're learning, but it's also an opportunity for me to teach you more and have you read and think. So here we go. So July 14th, 1933. Again, 1933 is the beginning of when the Nazis are in charge of Germany. Remember, World War II, it begins in 1939, so this is 6 years before that. And I took this piece of text from the U.S. Holocaust Museum. And it's meant to show how one of the ways in which the Holocaust started. The German government instituted the law for the prevention of progeny with hereditary diseases. This law called for the sterilization of all persons who suffered from diseases considered hereditary. Sterilization means just like what you would do to a dog, spay or neuter, they would have surgeries to so that they could not they were no longer fertile. Like removing uteruses and people who, and this is involuntary, this is forced sterilization of people who had mental illness, learning disabilities, physical deformities, epilepsy, blindness, deafness, and severe alcoholism. With the law's passage, the Third Reich, that means the Nazi government, also stepped up its propaganda against the disabled, regularly labeling them life unworthy of life, or useless eaters, and highlighting their burden upon society. Think back to social Darwinism, this whole idea of unfit. The Nazis believed in this racial pseudoscience, this racist false science that disabled people were weak and therefore did not deserve to live. And so they're creating propaganda, and they're also sterilizing people. And so based on this reading, what happened to people with disabilities in Germany in 1933 with this law? Well, there was propaganda against them. So they were humiliated in public, and they were also sterilized. At this point, they're not tortured or killed. So these two. However, 6 years later, in 1939, remember, Hitler invades Poland in September. So this is right before he does so. The Reich Ministry, that's the German government, the Nazis of the Interior, circulated a decree, that's a law, compelling all physicians, nurses, and midwives to report newborn infants and children under the age of 3 who showed signs of severe mental or physical disability. So this is saying doctors, nurses, and people who help women give birth have to report to the government if there are children or newborns who have signs of physical or mental illness. At first, only infants and toddlers are incorporated into the effort. Eventually, juveniles up to 17 years of age were also killed. Conservative estimates suggest, so conservative estimates, this means that at the low side, at least 5,000 physically and mentally disabled children were murdered through starvation or lethal overdoses of medication. And so you can see that the Nazis are focused on, based on their beliefs of survival of the fittest in terms of social Darwinism and their extreme racist beliefs about have to do with this another false science called eugenics. They are now getting doctors and nurses to murder the disabled and disabled children, the most vulnerable people in the society. By 1939, the question I wrote is, how had the Nazis' policies toward disabled people changed from the policy in 1933, from question 1? So how is this policy? So here it is, there's propaganda against disabled in 1933. There's also forced sterilization disabled people. By 1939, what has changed? Well, here they are being identified and murdered. And so has the policy toward disabled people remained the same? Did it become more humane? Or did the policies toward people with disabilities become more cruel and murderous? Okay, that's question 2. Question 3, based on the question above, what group of people became complicit or cooperated with the Nazi government in identifying and murdering people with disabilities? So this law said that what type of people had to identify and then murder people with disabilities through either lethal overdoses of medication or through starvation. Who were the people who had to do that? And from above, was it soldiers, judges, parents, or doctors, nurses, and midwives? So you'll look at this up here and see who are the people who were being compelled to report and then to murder these children. Okay, at this point you're going to watch the film, and let's see. Actually, I'm not going to watch the film here. You can do that on your own. But let's see. And the film you can find in the instructions on the page. And at the 120 mark, you're going to say, why is it a lie that villagers near the Mauthausen camp claimed they had no idea the concentration camp was there? So you're going to hear a veteran speak about how he knew that the villagers were aware that the camp was there. Okay? So look at 1 minute, 20 seconds into the video, and the soldier will say why he knew that the Germans were lying that the concentration camp was there. Because it was obvious, and you'll see why it was obvious. Later in the video, at 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the video to 3 minutes 30 seconds into the video, one of the U.S. soldiers who's remembering what he saw, they saw an insane asylum where mentally ill people were being kept. But as we saw earlier, how were mentally ill people being treated in Nazi Germany? Do you think they were being cared for? Well, of course, likely that is unlikely. And so you'll see, were people with mental disabilities being tortured and used as medical experiments? Or was the asylum empty and used to store ammunition? Or was the asylum used as a crypt to store bodies? And so you'll see what, in video evidence of what was happening at the Hadamar concentration camp. Ray Leopold, who's the man who saw these horrible things of what the Nazis had done to the most vulnerable people in their society, to disabled people, and also to any political prisoners at the time. He says in the video at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I felt that it was too bad that I was forbidden by the Geneva Convention to kill. The Geneva Convention are a set of laws that are passed that were agreed to by different nations and giving rules in wartime. There are rules in warfare, and especially how you treat prisoners. And so they had captured these Nazi soldiers. And so you're not allowed to torture prisoners. You're not allowed to kill prisoners after they surrender. And he said it was hard for him. He wanted to kill because of what he saw that those soldiers had done to the mentally ill people who were in the Hadamar asylum. And so he wanted to be able to kill those Nazis. We'll see next week that the Nazis go on trial after the war. And we'll see why it's important to have a judicial system where there's justice given. And later, many of them are put to death after a trial. What did American soldiers force German civilians to do after they liberated the concentration camp Ludwigslust in Germany? And so here you'll see another veteran talk about what they forced the German civilians to do. That means the people who lived in the village. What did they force them to do when they discovered the concentration camp next to their village? Okay, and then this is check all of that apply. What evidence is there that the Holocaust happened? There are some people who deny the Holocaust, that it happened. And it's extremely dangerous because we see the importance of recognizing genocide in order to prevent it from happening in the future. We also see how important it is to understand the suffering and the pain of other people and how and what causes it. And so there are, as historians, there are lots of different sources in which to verify that this event happened. And it's unfortunate because many of the people who survived World War II are now dying out in this generation. They're very old now. And so we're no longer going to be able to talk to them individually, but we have testimony on video and letters from survivors. There are records that the Germans made from the death camps and concentration camps. There's testimony from American troops, Soviet troops who liberated the camps. There's film footage and photographs. There are plans, speeches, and orders from the Nazi leaders. There are mass graves in Eastern Europe that are still being discovered. There are confiscated items from Jewish family, including jewelry, artwork. There are millions of eyewitnesses from many nations, right? This war happened in the middle of Central Europe and spread throughout. And there are court records from the trials following the war. These are all, so each one you can check off, these are all different sources to confirm the horror of the Holocaust. What percentage of the 9 million Jews in Europe died in the Holocaust? Well, this percentage problem, 6 million Jews died in Europe. And so if you have 6 out of the 9 million Jews who lived in Europe died. So what percentage is this? So let's reduce, right? And so 3 goes into 6 2 times, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. How do I make this into a percentage? Well, I divide. 3 goes into 2. And 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 goes into 20 6 times. 3 times 6 is 18, right? And then I drop the 0. 3 goes into 20 another 6 times. With 2 left over, 3 goes into 20. It goes 6 6 6 6 6 6 6. So that's my decimal. And to get a percentage, I multiply by 100. And so that's 66% of the population of Jews in Europe were killed by the end of the Holocaust. And this is all this is in the final part of the film. Non-Jewish Polish people killed by the Nazis was 2 million. How many Soviet prisoners of war? 4 million. These are huge numbers, very hard to wrap your head around, but important to think about. The devastation that the Nazis caused on people around the world. What nation's army first discovered the death camps in Czechoslovakia and Poland? Hint, it is the nation that was attacking Germany from the east. Sorry, I don't have a map. Here's Germany. Here's Poland. Here's the USSR. Here's France. Here's Britain. Never eat soggy waffles. All right. So remember, we looked at D-Day. Britain and the USA attacked Germany from this side. What side is this? The USSR is attacking Germany from this side. And so as the US and Britain are attacking from this side, the USSR is attacking from this side. What is this side? That will answer your question. Okay. The poster below suggests all of the following except. I'm going to stop right here and start with another video. Hold on.